There might be a few stragglers coming in, but we will kick off anyway because everyone is pretty time poor. So firstly, thank you everyone for coming. My name's Alicia Cutler. I'm the General Manager Community Services, and it's part of, or I guess one of my teams that administers the Community Assistance Program, and it's Anne here who has done and assisted us in the review. So that's by way of background. Just want to commence today with an acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Darumbal people, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to the neighbouring Aboriginal peoples within our local government area, the Gungaloo Nation people, the Barada, Capybara, Getamarala people, and also acknowledge the Torres Strait Islander people whose land is in the Torres Strait but who live and work on Aboriginal land. So before we kick off, just want to let you know that we are recording the session today, if anyone's a bit camera shy, but that's so that people can get on and watch the session at a later date if they happen to miss it. We've had a few apologies. So thanks very much. I'm going to hand over to Anne now to kick off and talk about the review, and I'll help her out and chime in. Only to say that we're pretty informal people, so bear with us and ask questions and we'll run through it. But we have got time at the end, and we wanted to talk about sort of what initiatives that you might have and want to explore with you, and then and if you actually want to step through the program on the screen, we can also organise that for you. So depending on what interest or where your interest lays. So, I was meant to introduce the people. You can do that.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Anne Davey. Unfortunately, Councillor Wickerson is ill and wasn't able to attend, but he does send his apologies. But I thought I'd just also mention some of the team that's here that looks after the Community Assistance Program. Some of the names you may very well be familiar with, such as Carrie and Debbie and now Alicia, but there's also Christine Bell, who looks after the Environmental and Sustainability Grant. And we've got everybody from Alicia's team here. My role, I don't work directly with Alicia, but my role is the Grants and Policy Advisor for Council. So I'm the one the lucky person who fills out all those grants applications on behalf of Council for all the things that we seek funding for. So I have experience from where you're looking at. So looking at that application form, trying to make sense of some of the guidelines and things like that. I've got 4 years under my belt now of doing just that for Council. But I've also been on the other side of the table in a past life where I was on a number of different panels to review applications. So I guess I have an understanding from both those perspectives of the things that you as an applicant need to do, but also from the point of view of the panel and the things that they're looking for from an application. So we'll go on to the first slide, I guess, or the next slide. I thought just to kick it off, we'd look at, I guess, what the Community Assistance Program looks like right now, just to give you an idea of if you want, the products that are on offer through the CAP program. And we've got a number of different programs there. And I'll just give you a brief recap of what each of those are. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about maybe some of the specifics a little bit later on. I guess first to start off with, unlike previously, there are only 2 rounds this annual round. So there's 2 rounds a year, and the first round has just been announced now, and the next round is likely to be announced mid-January or February. So that's one of the changes. The other, we'll go through the products here, which is the Community Development Grant, which really funds, I guess, any kind of program or activity that you as a community organization might want to either deliver or take advantage of, such as workshops, training sessions, getting speakers in, engaging consultants and advisors and other kind of experts to help you doing some of the things that you want to do, or you can use it to develop programs yourself. You can also use the grant for equipment or resources that you need to deliver your activities. So there are 2 rounds a year of that, and the maximum grant amount for that particular program is $1,000. The next, I guess, product there are 2 different streams for the events. So we have a local stream, which is for local area or specific group types of activities. That could be things like a community garden day, a club open house, or a fair. And then we have a larger one, which is the regional community events, which is for larger events that attract people from outside of your local area, or maybe are things like a regional or state competition, a craft fair, or a cultural festival, things of that sort. Then we also have 2 other products which are not necessarily open to you as organizations, but but it's part of the CAP program, which are the educational bursaries. There are 3 of those. And the community facilities insurance support, which goes towards supporting insurance costs for people who use or your designated facilities. Oh, and the other thing is, I got a note here. I want to kick it over to Chris to actually talk a little bit about the environmental and sustainability grant. So she can tell a little bit more about what that's about.
So I just know that there was someone here from a hall. So just speaking to that, what do you call it? The community facilities and the hall insurance scheme. So the reason that they're not particularly open is that because all of those community halls have already been defined ahead of time. So council's already done that. So if you were the recipient of that assistance for insurance previously, you certainly will be again. So just to mention that. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Alicia, and thanks, Anne. Look, I guess is there anybody here who might be interested in growing the resilience of your club or your organisation, perhaps saving money, or perhaps delivering projects that sort of might make a difference for the community? These are the sorts of the grants that are covered by the environment and sustainability grants under this program. So this has been running now for about 3.5 years, I'd say. Over that time, we've supported about 30 different projects. So there's been grants for everything from habitat restoration works through to on-ground activities, pollution prevention. There's been grants for community gardens. There's been grants for assisting to develop sustainable food options and to feed some of the most vulnerable members of our community. There's also been grants out there for community workshops and other activities which I guess really help you to look at how you can use your resources more efficiently. So that's what the Environment and Sustainability Grants program is in place to do, and certainly look forward to partnering with you to deliver some of those outcomes. And thank you all for being here today.
So those are I guess that's what the Community Assistance Program covers, the products within the whole program. We'll go on to the next slide, which is to tell you a little bit about what's been happening just recently. So a review was undertaken to, I guess, accomplish a number of things. The things that we did look into in the review is to make sure that what we're doing fits with the legislation. We have to do what's right, and we have to do what's we're required to do by state legislation. So that's one of the things that we looked at, is to make sure that we're doing everything by the book and as rigorous as possible. I guess the other thing is that the program needed to fit into the budget constraints. As you're all aware, the council's budget has been reviewed, and as a result, I guess CAP has had some changes to the amount of money that's been available through the program. And I guess to ensure that it tried to do as much as it can with reduced resources, we looked at what the program was trying to achieve and worked kind of from the ground up to make sure that we could reach as many community members as possible, and that we ensured that the programs that were delivered through CAP could provide as much benefit to Rockhampton as possible too. And you'll look at and you'll see how that's reflected in the application and the things that we're looking for in the applications. we still need to see that you've been spending your funds appropriately, but the emphasis has changed, or there's greater emphasis on what your activities are going to do, what they're going to be providing to the community, the impact that you're going to be having, and as a consequence then, the impact that CAP is having as a whole. So yeah, we'll go on to the next slide. So this is just going to tell you a little bit about how to find the things that you need to know to keep informed. So the website, I'm sorry, it's a little bit blurry there, but if you go under Community and Events in the website, down and underneath that, on that menu is Grants and Sponsorships. If you select that, the CAP program, the Community Assistance Program, is listed right there as one of the items within that menu. So you can get directly there, or you can do a search through the search function in the website. Just search for Community Assistance Program, and that will bring up the result to take you right there. The other image there is for the newsletter. Now that's something that you can subscribe to from the Community Assistance Program webpage. There's an area there called CAP Newsletter Updates, and if you click the subscribe button, that brings up that little window there where you can fill in your information. And what will happen is that you'll receive emails with that will alert you to when the next round is available, as well as other information that's relevant to the program. So next one. This just goes through, I guess, shows you what the two documents are that you really have to kind of be aware of. One is the application form, and then the other one is the fact sheet or guidelines. Now, each application form has the guidelines attached to them, so that when you click on an application form, you automatically get the guidelines that you need to refer to in your application. So next one. So as part of the review, we looked at the processes that were, needed to, I guess, administer the program. And we did some work to try to make things as easy as possible for you, to try to simplify some things, to make things a little bit clearer and more transparent, I guess. And because that is one of the requirements of legislation, is that there's a transparent process here. So the process that's followed is the one that's listed up here, which is your application is reviewed for eligibility. So eligibility, that kind of information really is about your organization's official status. So are you a not-for-profit organization? Do you fit some of the criteria, again, listed in the guidelines, so that you're a recognized community organization? Other requirements are that you have no debts with council, that you have the required insurance in place, and that you have no outstanding acquittals from previous grants. However, if you don't meet the eligibility requirements, if you're an individual or if you're a group that's not incorporated, you can actually contact, perhaps another community organization who is eligible and who may be able to put in an application on your behalf. That just needs to be recognized in your application. Other eligibility requirements are whether or not your project fits within the guidelines. So, if you're applying for the community development grant, looking at what the things are that one covers, and you're applying under that one, well, your project has to kind of fit that framework. Or if you have an event, which kind of event would your event fit in, whether it's a local one or a regional one? So we look at whether your project is actually eligible for funding. Then we look at the things that you've listed, your costs, your project costs, to make sure that when you're applying for funding, that you have costs that are eligible, that can be the grant can be applied against, and that information is again available in the guidelines. So once your application is deemed that it's eligible, it goes on to the next stages, which is that it's assessed by an assessment panel. And the assessment panel looks at your application, how well you've filled out the selection criteria and the other information that you've provided with your application against the selection criteria, what we're seeking, and kind of prioritizes each of the applications based basically on how well you've addressed those things, how well the benefits that the selection panel feels that you will provide to the community. Once those applications are accepted, if they've gotten through that process, then funding is allocated. And depending on the pool that's available, we look at what you're asking for and how that fits in with the amount of money that's available. You'll then receive notification if you've been unsuccessful or if you've been successful. After that, if you're successful, an agreement will be sent out to you, and upon receipt of that, funds are then dispersed to your organization. You then deliver the project, and after you've completed the project, you then have to submit an acquittal report. Now, I guess I'll tell you a little bit about, based on talking to some of the people here, some of the things that we're looking for in that acquittal report are how you report against what you've done. So we want to see information about the outcomes that you've achieved. So if you've put on an event, how many people attended? Where did they come from? Any kind of feedback that you might have received from participants and things like that. If you're applying for funding for your own organization, we want to see, what you've achieved within your organization through that funding. So let's say you've applied for funding for some training, and you're acquitting, you've had somebody come in and provide that training. In your acquittal, you can say, well, now this lets our organization do things that we weren't able to do, or we're able to do them better. We want to see what the results are from some of the things that you've done with the funds that have been provided. And with the acquittal, you can certainly provide photos, but we don't want reams of photos. 3 or 4 is just fine. So that's the process there. We'll go on to the next slide, which goes into what we need from you in an application. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about the selection criteria in a little bit, but these are the things just to kind of prepare yourself for when you're faced with that application. Keeping these things in mind will help. Address the selection criteria. I know it's really easy because it's something that I find when I have to write an application. I've got a story I want to tell, but it may not necessarily fit the story that they're asking for in the application form. The application form is asking for kind of specific things, but I might have some additional things that I want to say. And really, those additional things are not necessarily going to be influence the assessors. They're just looking whether that you've actually answered the question and you've answered it appropriately. So that comes down to that clear and concise answers. You don't need to write a novel. You need to, dot points are perfectly fine as long as you clearly convey some of the things that are required in those the selection criteria. One of the things that it's really easy to miss some bits of information. We want to make sure that we have complete applications, because that just it will make things work more smoothly if we don't have to go back and ask, well, did you actually have your public liability insurance certificate, those sorts of things. So make sure that you've completed the application and included all the required attachments. It's also important to see that there's community support for what you're doing. And again, this is kind of reflected in the selection criteria, but it is kind of at the heart of everything that this program is trying to do, is to think about, well, what kind of benefits are the community getting from this? Who within the community is getting these benefits? And who in the community is supporting what you're doing? You may want to bring out in your application that you're working with other organizations or groups or individuals within the community to help deliver some of the things that you're doing. We also need you to acknowledge Council's contribution at events and in your reporting and things like that. So, and then I guess to reiterate, providing that kind of evidence of the outcomes in your acquittal is really important for us, because we'll be gathering that information and reporting that back to the council. and saying, well, this is what the CAP program has achieved. And we want that to be demonstrated. We want that to be communicated to council, and for council to then be able to tell that to the rest of the community too, to say, look, this is what this program has achieved. We've had, this many number of people attend community events. We've helped this many communities to do these sorts of, things and achieve these outcomes. So going to the next one. So this is kind of, I guess, the nitty-gritty here, which is the selection criteria. And it's been kind of pared down to 3 essential things, which are to describe the community benefits, to demonstrate that you're able to deliver the project, and to demonstrate that what you're doing will provide value for money. And I'll go in a little bit more detail about each of those things. We don't need the life history of your organization or anything like that, but what we do need is some very specific information about your project. Community benefits, for instance, this is actually one of the most important ones, I think, in my view of it, is, what does your project mean for the community? And even if these are activities or projects that are primarily for delivering things to your organization, like I said, training or maybe in equipment, being able to say, well, what does it allow you to do? What does it allow you to do for the community? So expressing those sorts of things is really important in that selection criteria. So an example of, I guess, how you would describe a community benefit, let's say for an event. You're planning an event that is for families, and it's a free or low-cost event. Well, you can describe that as, meeting a need for, at this time where families are really, feeling the crunch financially. That this event is providing a real need, meeting a real need within the community to have more things available for families because of it is, hard for them these days. So that way of not just saying we're going to have an event, but saying that we're going to have an event that's for a particular group of people, and this is the benefit that they're going to be getting from the event. With the ability to deliver, really we want, I guess, you to demonstrate that your organization is set to deliver the project. So if you receive your money, that you're ready to go, that there isn't anything else that you need to do, but once you get the money, you can go ahead and proceed. We want to, that is evidenced by that your project has been well planned. So if you have an event, being able to describe the things that you've done in that planning, that you're ready to go, that you've got all the things organized, your venue has been secured, those sorts of activities, you've got a plan there. We also want to see that it's not a one-off event, or this will actually put you in a better position for the future. That the event will build awareness within the community, or, about your organization. So we want to see that you can actually, I guess, build on this. That it's something that, again, that kind of crosses over into the benefits, but the ability to deliver something that will indeed provide those benefits to the community. And that might be because you had experience doing something like that in the past. The value for money is really about getting the biggest bang for your buck, in effect. We want to see that the community supports what you're doing, and that could be through letters of support, but we don't need reams and reams of letters of support. A couple of key letters of support would be good. Your involvement with other organizations, other people within the community, if you could describe that too. Or other contributions that you're receiving or your project will have. That could be either in kind or it can be cash. So even the number of volunteers that you have participating, then some of the other groups that are involved in helping to produce what you're doing. And value for money also is to convey what this grant funding will mean to you and what it could mean for what you're trying to deliver. We know that a lot of community organizations are doing it tough these days. So being able to explain that this funding will allow you to do what you want to do is really important for us to hear. We know that some organizations may find it more easy or have other ways of funding things, but if we know that what this funding means for you, the capacity that it allows you to have, we want to be able to use that as a means of evaluating your application. Anyway, we'll go on to the next one. So I guess just some things to keep in mind. I know this is kind of text heavy here, but just things as we're going through, the program has been reviewed. The project can receive funding from only one CAP program. So if you have an event, you can't apply for this grant and this grant under CAP and try to, match them up together. You have to apply for funding under one of the programs. Projects that have already received funding from council are not eligible for further funding. Funding is only provided during the funding round. We don't have any out-of-round funding. So you'll have to be aware of your activities and things like that and plan for those rounds that are going to happen within a year. Again, if your organization is not eligible, we suggest you try to partner with other community organizations that are. Another reminder to quit early. You can't apply for funding under future rounds if you haven't already acquitted your grant, or previous grant. And to choose the right program for your project. So I'd invite you to go through the guidelines to familiarize yourself with what each one of those particular products is for and what it's trying to achieve. And to ask your questions early. Don't wait till the end of the grant period to call up the team here to try to get an answer to a question. We'd really appreciate you to bring up those things earlier rather than later. And that's it. Thank you very much. Is there, the questions here are really kind of free-for-alls. Whether I can answer it or whether Alicia or some of the team here can answer it, we're more than happy to answer any questions. Oh.
Thank you so much, Anne. I was just going to talk to possibly one of those criteria back in the slides was just about alignment to council's goals and objectives. So in terms of this program, the whole emphasis of the program is to partner with community groups to do more in the community. So if you pull up council's corporate plan, there is a whole lot of objectives in there that I have no doubt that you won't have any problem sort of finding a pathway and to acknowledge into that. So just to pick that up and read the corporate plan and see what we're trying to achieve on that space. Yeah. So there's two ways we can go now. We can open the floor for more general questions, but if you would actually like us to step through that application process on the form, if you need a bit of help with the IT side, we can also do that. So how are we feeling? Let's go. Good question. Hey, we had anticipated that question.
Yes. So let me just, sorry, I have to bring up the slide as well because I did have that.
Just while Anne's getting that, so just to explain a little bit around the why with that. So what we had in our previous program was sort of people applying in a round, then we'd go and we had two, maybe 3 rounds a year. Then all the money would go in the first bit and then we'd be left with not much. And the further you got into the financial year, you were at a disadvantage with really what you were putting forward. So by defining the rounds and sort of saying that there is no out-of-round funding, that sort of enables I know that puts pressure on you guys to be more organised, but it makes it fairer for everyone, because the way it was, all the money was running out by the end of the year.
And I will say, one of the things, we started from literally the ground floor up. So we started from the legislation and what that said we had to do with a grant program. And really, it's about fairness, openness, and transparency for the community. I mean, the community has to be reassured that this process is open, it's fair, that everyone can see where those funds are going. So that's what I guess one of the things I wanted to reassure you is that that's the way we've looked at every single step in this whole process. To answer your question though, for this round, applicants will be notified in early November. So if you get your application in by 7th of October, you could, I guess, roughly count that it would be a month for it to be processed and be notified then.
And to be used in what time frame?
Oh, I see. Sorry, we
The
used
financial year.
the financial year. Yes, sorry.
Yes, so
Yeah.
look, if there's only 2 applications that come in a funding pool, it's going to be much easier. So depending on that volume, that amount of time keeps us covered, but it may be quicker than that as well. Next question, Joe.
So I don't know.
You don't hear that, radio?
So the following round, if you announce it in January, will be about a month, same process.
Yeah, same time frame.
Yeah,
So if we wanted to apply, sorry, I'm just going to hold the attention.
go for it, because everyone will benefit anyway.
If I want to put an application in for the first round for an event that's happening, say next May,
Yes.
we don't have an exact date yet, and I know we're not going to get an exact date for that event until the end of October, or until the end of November. Can we still do that?
Yes, you can still do that, and just explain. So the concept is just explain that is the situation, but what you want to do is get in, and then if you miss out on the funding round for whatever reason, then go again for the next funding round. Yeah, you know, if you miss out first time, go again. Yeah, because the concept is if you've got eligibility, so we've got a certain number of grants, and if you meet that eligibility, then it's about who rises to the top in terms of making our best effect in the community. But that's not to say that everyone hasn't got in first, and then the next round, you know, it's open and available. So go
The last
again.
question that comes to me off the top of my head is, as a not-for-profit that sits across a number of different events,
Yes.
if we put an application in for one event in, say, round 1, are we then, and say we are successful, can the same not-for-profit apply for funding for a different event in round 2?
Yes. We specifically discussed that, but not 2 events in the same round.
No.
If that makes
Okay,
sense.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but 2 over the same round, you're eligible again.
But I'm
as long
just
as
listening to you
they're
talking about getting organisations to horse first for other organisations. I'm just wondering,
Yeah,
because I know that's something that we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, look, that's a consideration. So just, we've been on this long and drawn out process to get this review. It started, I don't know, last year, well into last year. And we would have liked to have it before now, but here it is. So really it's a 12-month process, and what I guess I want to hear from you is that if it falls short in different ways, or there is a category of influence that you think should be, or that you've seen should be allowed, please raise it with us. And then that's something, because council said let's only do this for 12 months and then see how effective it is. So please provide us that feedback on the way through as well. Any other questions? Yeah.
If you looking at an event that's like what's going on there. So if you're looking at an event that might be September next year, will that not be considered at all in either of these 2 rounds?
Oh, that's the one for Kerry?
For the second round, but the funding will be released during our financial year, but you can expend it necessarily.
Yeah, so just to circle around for the video, so, because we do have, the question was asked then if the event is the following financial year, what you can do. So you can still apply in that second round, and we can give you that funding in advance of the event. Because remember, we're looking for people to be well planned. So we're not penalising you if you're across that financial year. Yeah, we can work that out. Any other questions? Yes, on the back side.
You have up here about information and a contact.
Is there a mentoring program if we ring that number, will we speak to someone different each time?
Stand up, Debbie. For those of you that don't know, this is Deb Bullman. So she is sort of our key support for you if you haven't already come across Deb, but she will help you get those things over the line. And yeah, look, between Debbie and Kerry, we're a very small team, so yeah, you'll get us, no worries. There was another question on the back, yeah.
So I'm a part of a hall committee,
Yeah.
and most of the fundraising that we do is to basically maintain the hall.
Yeah.
And in the past, we have been given funding for jobs that required, like, you know, stumps being repainted and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Is there still parts of the program that can be for maintenance, like assistance with those things, or
Look,
not?
You could only go under those minor ones. So just remembering with our budget pressures that this program, first of all, we talked about whether or not, because a lot of councils have cut these sort of things out. So we talked about whether or not we still wanted to do that. And me personally, I felt this is our best opportunity to make an impact in the community, so advocated for it. But it did cut out. Now, unfortunately, with that capital works funding and that matching funding, we haven't been particularly swamped with applications. Like, I think over the last 2 years, we've maybe given 2 out. So it wasn't a high demand, and that's the reason that it has fallen down. But I'll take your feedback on that one, yeah. Yes?
So with the funding through there, we'll be putting in for a grant. As well as that, we would like to be looking for in-kind support from council.
Yep.
Is that a separate application, or how do we go with that?
I would probably like you to wrap it up into the one. So this covers the in-kind support as well as the cash sponsorship as well. I know that there's some ladies here from the dance festival. So there were a couple of events. So just in terms of this review, we were going to talk about this, but there were a couple of events, and the dance festival was one where council have already segregated out support for that. Now there was 4 of them, and so we've got the Rocky Swap, the dance festival. No, not Rocky Swap. A Stedford Dance Festival, the 2 shows, that's the Mount Morgan show and Ridgeland show and Christmas Fair. Sorry, that was a bit ad-lib there. So those ones for the dance ladies, and that is really centred around in-kind and the continued support through the theatre.
In terms of the actual application process, the application form does actually ask you what kind of in-kind support you will be including in, you know, to deliver your project or your event. You have to organize that in-kind support yourself. So if you needed to get quotes from council about, or, you know, I guess agreement from council that yes, that venue is available, or this kind of assistance from council, you need to seek that out yourself. That's not something that this team will do on your behalf, so you will have to seek that out, but you include that information in your application.
Okay, we go separately to seek that. It's not part of this process. We report on it if we've got it.
That's right, exactly right, yeah.
And we seek it separately.
That's right.
Any other questions while we're on a roll? Thoughts about things that might fit in the program that you want to apply for? All quiet?
One that comes to mind, our club is putting in some infrastructure, but we need to cover it with an extension of our lease.
Yes.
The cost of that, I believe, is either up to $1,000. We'll probably have it surveyed and apply to council, but would that fit any of the criteria?
Yeah, I would think that first, that community development grant, certainly you could apply for that under that. I thought of something else with that community development grant and I was going to interject on, but anyway. Yeah, another question after that? Yeah. Yes, you. Sorry.
With the education bursary,
So is that looking at our high schools on behalf of our years 12, probably ducks, who are going to attend CQ? Is that the one that is targeting?
Unfortunately not. So this is specific bursaries that we provide to CQU, and they, for their awards, like, so if you attend a graduation ceremony, there's certain outstanding people in that particular cohort that they designate that award. So it's
Schools there?
the intent in that one, and sorry, it's only CQU.
So you don't need school support. It's written down there, nominations are solicited from the community, schools and businesses.
So we'll have to amend that one, sorry. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Do lighting upgrades come under sustainability and environmental?
Great question. If there's potential for some significant efficiencies that you can be delivering through there, and perhaps part of a broader program that you're delivering to achieve those efficiencies, would be certainly something that we really want to take.
All right, if there's no other questions, a few of us will hang around here if you want to approach us. But otherwise, we'll call it a day, and thank you again for your attendance. It's great for you to come along, and yeah, thank you. Safe travels home. Thank you.